The Simple Handicap for Thursday, October 17th. Thank you for making me a part of your morning. Before we get into the market rundown for this Thursday morning, I just want to inform everybody listening today on Apple or Spotify, if you're looking through the Week 7 live stream preview episode, you're not going to find it on the podcast feed. There was a playback error with the track. The audio was all banged up, and so I didn't publish it. If you want to watch the live stream this week, can head over to the RAS Picks YouTube channel. If you're watching this morning on YouTube, you'll see the video somewhere on the channel in your list, depending how frequently you visit. I would love if everybody takes time out of their day once the episode is done to head over. If you do have any questions or comment about the game in Week 7, you can leave it in the comments below or over on the live stream video, and I will get to answering it between now and kickoff. So thank you to everybody who did tune in to the live stream. Yesterday we had more than 450 people at a max concurrent rate on the stream, which was a new record high. People continue to enjoy those, and I really enjoyed doing them as well. So thanks to everybody who tuned in or will be tuning in after this podcast episode. All right, let's get to it. Market rundown for this Thursday morning. It's the Denver Broncos kicking things off tonight on the road at the New Orleans Saints. We're out to Broncos, a soft 3-point favorite across the board. Total still holding steady at 37. What we have been talking about every day here on the podcast this week came to fruition yesterday with the confirmation being that Chris Olave will miss, Rashid Shaheed will miss, Derek Carr will miss, Taysom Hill has the doubtful tag. It is the Bub Means showcase at wide receiver for the Saints tonight, catching balls from Spencer Rattler. Still the Saints dealing with question marks potentially on the offensive line at center and right guard. There are injuries aplenty all over. It is Bo Nix, believe it or not, laying 3 points on the road in Sean Payton's return back to New Orleans. Now, I think I'm going to end up passing, but I got to say, there is no way in the world that I'm getting out of the way to back Denver in this spot laying this number. I'm not doing it. There's no way. And I've seen commentary about the 3 games in 11 days. I went and I looked that up on the sports database and seeing what that presented. It wasn't a lot of data that came back from it. I found 15 instances of that being the case, and there wasn't anything super conclusive, 7-8 against the spread for those teams playing their third game in 11 days. We had another one earlier this season, and it was the Jets playing the Pats on Thursday Night Football, and the Jets played their best game of the season. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what to think about it, but I do know that Bo Nix laying 3 on the road, as bad as it might be for the Saints, boy, that's a lot of points for an offense that has really proven nothing this season at all. So I don't know if I'll end up doing anything with it, but it would be absolutely Saints or nothing for me at 3 tonight. Moving over to Sunday, it's New England, Jacksonville in the London game at Wembley Stadium. Still Jags 5.5 across the board, with Chris the one exception being 6. Total from 38 at open up to 42.5 and trending slightly lower at a few offshores. Surprise news yesterday as Drake May is getting an MRI. And at the time of recording this podcast, which is quite late on the Pacific time, very early morning Eastern time, waiting to see what the extent of anything might be. He was a full participant in practice, but went for an MRI for his knee afterwards. It's a very weird and unusual circumstance for that to happen. The Pats leave late on Thursday in the afternoon Eastern time, and so something to continue to watch is he on the plane or not? It's like the Friends finale. For those of you in the 90s sitcoms, hey, I pulled out a reference that nobody saw coming just now. Will he get on the plane or not? If he's on the plane, I would expect that he is playing. If that MRI turns into something more, oh boy, the reversal back to Jacoby Brissett would be pretty shocking. But if it is Drake May, you would expect that the Pats offense looks pretty competent against this Jaguars man defense scheme. Talked about it on the live stream preview yesterday, about how well Drake May looked against man coverage when the Texans threw it at him. It's a much different class of opponent here for the Jags. Now, the big mystery, again, with this game is the weather. We're now at 90% rain. Wind has came down a bit in terms of sustained speeds, 15 miles per hour. There's still gusts up to 40, and it's very inconclusive on that wind impact at field level. So wait and kind of see what happens here. But I tell you, if we get to Sunday and it's 90% rain and it's coming down and we got 15 mile per hour winds on the field, we won't be looking at 42.5. But the way these two teams match up and set up certainly presents itself as an over if May is healthy. And then there's the big question of the field condition and what are we going to get from that secondary surface. that they're using for the first time. A lot to figure out in this game that we won't really get answers to until later in the week. Seattle on the road at the Atlanta Falcons. This is a game that has been back and forth, back and forth, back and forth all week. And yesterday, another service, one that we respect a ton, came out and sent out Seattle +3. Talked about them being lean on the live stream preview yesterday. We're now looking at 2.5, but an expensive 2.5 at Pinnacle. There's a lot of love for Atlanta in the market, 47.5 on the total, out to 51, but starting to come back a little bit as we see these high totals in this 50 range continue to get bet under once we pass the Wednesday mark in the week. Tennessee on the road at the Buffalo Bills. Bills still 9-point favorites across the board. Total from 41 now shaded under to 41.5 at a couple books this morning. Amari Cooper uncertain if he will play in this game for the Bills. What was looking like he would be inserted into this offense seems like it might take another week for him to get integrated into this Bills offensive unit. Cincinnati on the road at the Cleveland Browns. The 6.5s are gone. We kind of hinted at that here on the pod. We're now down to 5.5 at Chris, 6 at Buckeye, 6 at BetOnline, 5.5 showing at FanDuel, 5.5 at Jazz as well. It's such an uncomfortable spot to be getting this many points with the Browns at home, given the offensive struggles and the departure of Amari Cooper, even with Nick Chubb back and the offensive line potentially getting a tick healthier. There's just not a lot of optimism around this team. It's just a big number for the Bengals to be laying, and it's one of these games that fits into many profiles this week, where it's a team that is clearly at a price that you should be backing, but there's so many questions about what the team is that makes it very hard to back, and it's very tough week 7 all around. Houston on the road at the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay still clinging on as a 3-point favorite, so it's a very soft 3 at this point. Would expect it to come down to 2.5 points. Plenty of injuries to watch for the Houston Texans this week. I think a lot worse than was initially anticipated, at least for the Wednesday practice day, as Al-Shaair, Jimmy Ward, Lassiter starting safeties, both were out. You have middle linebackers missing as well. They might have to switch to Green Dot. So there's questions around the Texans' defensive injuries, and that's something to watch today to see what was vet rest day versus what was actually injury concerning that things have to watch going forward in the days to come. Miami on the road at the Indianapolis Colts. It was an ugly injury report for the Indianapolis Colts this morning, but I suspect that a lot of this is rest related. So the report as it read had Pittman's, Downs, Kelly, and Smith, all DNPs, and then EJ Speed was limited. Those are 4 injuries on the offensive side that would obviously be very impactful, but considering how these guys were handled last week and their performances, would expect that all of these guys end up playing. The only question mark here, as Richardson practiced in full, is going to be Jonathan Taylor at running back, who was a DNP yesterday. We'll see if he gets time today on the practice field. Could be an indication for the Dolphins out of the bye. Achane is back practicing in full, and so that's a big boost for a running game for Miami that is absolutely going to be featured a ton in this matchup. We got to a soft 3. We're now back to 3 minus 15, and then 3 flat for the most part across the board. That minus 15 is showing at Chris, 41.5 up to 43.5. Pretty good chance if you're watching the Sam P videos weekly over at Chicken Dinner. There's going to be a pick for me in this game going out later today, and it's not going to be on the Colts. Spoiler, spoiler. Detroit on the road at the Minnesota Vikings. All of the 2s are gone. We're back to 1.5 for the Minnesota Vikings in this game. 50.5 is the total across the board. Injury move for Minnesota, I think very much driven by Aaron Jones. Vikings go out of their way to add another running back to the roster as O'Connell goes back and adds Cam Akers to the team. If you consider that Aaron Jones at his position is hurt and you see the midweek addition, it's a very good clue if you're following teams and injuries. If they're adding into position behind an injury, not a good note for the player who is injured. And Aaron Jones, despite being on the field and moving around in the Monday out of the bye workout, was not on the practice field yesterday. Pretty damning for his case to be on the field if he is not out there again today. And that would be a big blow to this Vikings offense that certainly looked a lot different without him in the lineup against the Jets the last time we saw them on the field. Philadelphia Eagles on the road at the New York Giants. Eagles 3 -20 across the board with a total of 43. Got to a very soft 3, and then that same group I referenced earlier, we respect them a ton, had a release on the Philadelphia Eagles that pushed this up a little bit. It's been a lot of sharp money on the Giants Monday and Tuesday, and then yesterday on Wednesday, we saw the first counterpunch against that start to push the number up for the Eagles. Depending what you make of the Eagles offense, again, it could be a number that looks very short, as a lot of models, closing line models, projections make this number a lot higher, but the Giants certainly overperforming so far to date. Las Vegas on the road at the LA Rams, a soft 7 for LA across the board. Total in this one is at 43.5. There was a note that came out later yesterday around 6 p.m. Pacific time that said Cooper Kupp is on track to play in this game. Very back and forth commentary on whether or not Kupp returns this week or returns next week. If he is in, don't know if he's going to be at a full 100%, but it would be a boost for the Rams. I question, though, if his ruling in that potentially lingers here in the next day or two is going to do a whole lot to this number, because the Adams downgrade, there was a 1.5 that moved this number from 5.5 to 7, I think was a little bit faulty to begin with. And so I don't know if you're going to see a big bump off of this if Kupp is announced as in. Something to keep in the back of your mind if you're trying to time this one going forward. Carolina on the road at the Washington Commanders. Commanders 8-point favorites across the board. Total in this game, 51.5 at Buckeye, 51.5 at Chris. Some of the places that were showing 52 are no longer there. Again, we're into Thursday. It's another total in the 50s, and we're seeing under money slowly drip back into the market. It's just how the whole season has gone so far for 7 weeks. I saw Rob on his show had the over in this game, which sparked a little bit of movement in the market, and that now is kind of leveled out from the number which he was giving out yesterday on the show, but made a good case for why both offenses in this game are going to have success, especially with the Commanders' defensive injuries. I think the loss of Allen is significant, and if we're watching this defensive line with Farrell, Payne, Armstrong, Luvu, and now Baptiste on IR, all of a sudden up front in that defensive front seven, there are a lot of concerns to look at. For Carolina, the big story this week has been the potential return of Jonathan Brooks, who's been on IR for the duration of the season. He's eligible to return, but he got the week-to-week designation yesterday, which isn't a great indication of him being on the field later this week. Kansas City on the road at the San Francisco 49ers, still 1.5 across the board for the 49ers with a total of 47. New York Jets on the road at the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's got as high as 2.5 for the Jets. There was a lot of disagreement, both from bettors and services. Took the 2.5, potentially buys to 3 on the Steelers. We're now back down to 1.5 this morning for the Jets at FanDuel, 1.5 -10 at DK. Chris, Buckeye, BetOnline still 2 -10, but definitely a move yesterday on the Steelers once we saw those limits bump. 38 still the total left to right across the screen. Baltimore on the road at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's the Ravens, 3.5-point favorites across the board with a total now up to 49.5, was lingering around 48.5 for the majority of the week. Move on the over in this game, pushing this total up. And then the second game of the Monday night doubleheader, LA Chargers on the road at Arizona. It's still Chargers -2.5 with a total of 43.5. We, as I've talked about a lot this week, love the over in this game. We'll get news today on Marvin Harrison Jr. and see where he is at in the concussion protocol. I'm expecting him not to play. If he is able to play, that would be a definite bonus to the over in this game. That'll do it for me today. And again, a reminder that the Week 7 live stream preview is available on the YouTube channel. If you're on Apple or Spotify this morning, we'd love if you headed over. If you're watching already on YouTube, feel free to hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe, and go check out that video afterwards. Have a fantastic Thursday, everybody. We'll chat to you tomorrow.